First dates. They're supposed to be exciting, aren't they? Butterflies in your stomach, the thrill of meeting someone new. But not all first dates lead to romance. Some lead to something else. Something much, much worse. This story is real. And after you hear it, you'll think twice before accepting an invitation to a stranger's home. It started with a girl named Sarah, just an ordinary woman, living an ordinary life, until she met him. Sarah had been single for a while. She wasn't looking for love, but one night she found herself scrolling through a dating app, swiping left, swiping right, until she saw him. Daniel, handsome, charming, just the right mix of mystery and confidence. They matched, they talked, and within days she felt like she knew him. But you never really know someone, do you? Their first meeting was in a public cafe. He was just as charismatic in person. Polite, attentive, the perfect gentleman. And when he invited her to his home for dinner the following weekend, she said yes, she shouldn't have. The night of the date, Sarah drove out to his house. It was further than she expected, past the town, through winding roads, deep into the woods. By the time she arrived, it was nearly dark. His house was old, Victorian, towering, almost too perfect. The kind of house you see in a painting or a nightmare. Daniel greeted her at the door, smiling wide. "Right on time," he said. She stepped inside, and from the moment the door closed behind her, something felt off. The house was spotless, no clutter, no dust, but it didn't feel lived in. The dinner was perfect. Homemade spaghetti carbonara, candlelight, red wine. But then Sarah noticed something, a painting on the wall. A woman's face. Her eyes. Empty. Lifeless. "Who is that?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "An old family portrait," he said. "She lived here a long time ago." His voice was too casual, too practiced. Something about the woman in the painting unsettled her. It wasn't just her eyes, it was her resemblance. She looked like Sarah. Sarah laughed it off, but deep inside she felt a growing unease. She told herself she was being paranoid. Until she saw the door at the end of the hallway. It was slightly ajar, revealing a dark room beyond, and something inside her whispered, "Look inside." She excused herself, saying she needed the bathroom, but instead, she walked towards that door. Her fingers touched the wood. She pushed it open, and inside, she saw them. The room was filled with portraits, lined up neat and orderly, each one a different woman, and they all looked like her, Sarah, identical smiles, identical eyes. And then she saw the last one, the most recent. It was unfinished, the paint still wet, and beneath it, written in red, her name. She turned around. Daniel was standing there, smiling. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said. His voice was different now, darker. No more warmth, no more charm, just hunger. Sarah ran. She didn't care where she ran, through the hallway, past the dining table, toward the front door. But the door, it was locked. Behind her, Daniel sighed. "I really liked you, Sarah." She grabbed whatever she could, her wine glass, a chair, anything to fight. But then she saw it, the keys, on the counter. She lunged for them, knocking over a candle. A flame sparked, caught on the curtain. "Fire," Daniel cursed, lunged after her. but she had the keys. She didn't look back. She ran. Out the door, into the night. Behind her, the flames spread. The house burned. And Daniel, they never found his body. Just a single untouched painting. Hanging in the ashes. A portrait of her. Sarah survived, but some say she still sees his face. In reflections, in dreams, watching, waiting, first dates. They don't always end in love. Sometimes they end in something else. You know, they say that meeting someone new can be exciting, full of possibility. You're hoping for a connection, maybe even love. But sometimes when you're dating, what you meet isn't someone who wants your heart. Sometimes you meet something far darker. This is the story of Lisa. She was looking for something new, a fresh start. She didn't want the same old routine. She wanted excitement, adventure, maybe even a little romance. So she signed up for one of those dating apps. You know the ones. Swipe left, swipe right, chat for a few days, and then meet up. It all seemed harmless enough, but there was something about him, that drew her in. His name was Jack. He was charming, confident, easy to talk to. His profile picture showed a man with warm brown eyes, an easy smile, and a sense of mystery. Lisa didn't waste much time. She agreed to meet for dinner. They chose a quiet spot in the city, far from the noise. He promised to pick her up, and Lisa agreed, a little excited, a little nervous. But there's something you need to know. Not all dates go as planned. Jack arrived exactly on time, standing outside his car with a charming smile. He was just as she remembered, well-dressed, handsome, confident. They exchanged pleasantries and Lisa got in the car. The ride was comfortable at first, though the city lights quickly faded away. The further they went, the fewer people they saw, until it was just the road, the trees, and the occasional turn that seemed to lead into nothing. "Where are we going?" Lisa asked, trying to keep the conversation light. Jack only smiled, his eyes flicking toward her with a glint of something she couldn't quite place. "You'll see," he said, his voice smooth, calm, too calm. Minutes passed. The trees seemed to close in around them. The city lights were gone, replaced by the shadows of the woods. The road grew narrower, the silence stretching longer between them. Lisa couldn't help but feel uneasy. There was something wrong about the direction they were heading. The longer they drove, the more it felt like they were being swallowed by the darkness. "We're almost there," Jack said, his voice still smooth, but his smile faded slightly. It was too much. It was too quiet. And then Lisa asked the question that should have been asked much sooner. "Where are we going, Jack?" He didn't respond. Instead, the car continued down the narrow road until they reached a stop that was too sudden. A slight thud as the car halts, the sound of silence pressing in. Lisa looked around. The trees, the silence. There were no lights, nothing, just the shadow of the forest closing in on them. She could feel her heart begin to race. "Jack?" she asked, her voice trembling now. He didn't answer. Instead, he slowly turned to her. His eyes weren't warm anymore. There was something else there, a coldness, a dark glint that made her breath catch in her throat. Lisa didn't know why she stayed so calm for so long. Maybe it was shock, maybe it was fear. But the moment Jack started to speak again, something shifted in the air. Something wasn't right. "You're so beautiful," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "I've been waiting for you." Lisa's stomach dropped. That wasn't a compliment. That wasn't something a person says on a first date. Her hand moved to the door handle. "Jack," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I think I need to go." But Jack wasn't listening. His hand shot out, gripping the wheel, and his face twisted into something that didn't look human, something darker. "I don't think you understand," he whispered. "This date isn't over. Not yet." Lisa felt the chill wash over her. The air seemed to turn colder, the very atmosphere pressing in on her chest. She pulled at the door handle, locked. Her panic began to rise, but then she noticed something strange. In the rearview mirror, she saw a movement. Another car, but it wasn't behind them. It was beside them. A dark, shadowed figure in the passenger seat of a car that had no driver. The figure was watching her, staring right into her eyes. Lisa gasped, her heart hammering in her chest. And that's when she heard the voice again, Jack's voice. But this time it wasn't his lips that moved. It was a voice deep inside her head. "You belong to me now." The coldness flooded her body. She could hear her own breath, loud in her ears. She could feel something inside of her snap. This wasn't a date. This wasn't real. Jack's twisted grin widened, his eyes growing darker. And then, before Lisa could react, the other car vanished. The figure was gone. The grip on the door loosened. The car was moving again. Lisa couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. All she could do was sit there, paralyzed by the fear that wrapped around her like a vice. And then Jack spoke again, his voice smooth as silk. "You were never meant to leave." Lisa couldn't answer. Her mind was reeling. Her instincts were screaming. But it was too late. The road was endless and there was no escape. She was trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake from. When the car finally stopped again, they were at the edge of the woods. The same place, the same shadows. And Jack, he was gone. Some dates end before they even begin, but not every date is meant to end.